Good evening. My name is Mena Hanna. I'm the General Director of Spoleto Festival USA. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening and for supporting this festival. Tonight, we are honored to have Jamez McCorkle, whom many of you may know from Omar, as Omar in Omar, that he debuted the title role of Omar last year at the festival in May. Jamez and I became good friends when he was doing Omar here. I mean, so much about him I found entirely fascinating. The way that he just sings with such power and conviction and does it with so much fluency and has such fluidity on stage. You don't normally see that in a singing actor. And you know, the rest of the world is catching on, I think. He's got a great career in Germany. He was just doing Lear at the Bayerische Staatsoper as the Duke of Cornwall. He obviously did the role of Lenski in Onegin back in Spoleto, I think in 2019. He's also sang at the Met, he sung at the Philadelphia Orchestra, he sung at the Trondheim Symphony Orchestra and at the Theater Basel. We're going to talk a little bit about a world premiere production that we're putting together for 2023 called A Poet's Love, based on the Schumann song cycle, Dichterliebe. So, without further ado, welcome Jamez.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. Happy you could join us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for that great introduction.
Anytime. And you did do Lenski in 2019, right?
2019, maybe it was 2018. I wasn't too sure about it.
Okay, 2018, 2019. You did Lenski in the past year in Spoleto.
Yeah.
That was your first time singing at the festival?
Yeah, that was my first time singing at the festival. Lenore Rosenberg, who at the time was working at the Spoleto Festival, was a big fan of mine. And so she threw me into this role. This was actually my first contracted performance ever at the Spoleto Festival. So this is why I consider this one of my home places to perform.
That's right. This is your home festival. I love to hear that. Tell me a little bit about how, I mean, there are so many different sides to you as a musician and as a performer. Obviously, when you're doing Dichterliebe here, you're going to be singing it and playing it you're going to be accompanying yourself like a kind of 19th century Elton John. Tell me a little bit about how you became such an incredible singer and also like a virtuoso pianist. I mean, that doesn't normally happen at the same time.
Well, I started off at 4 years old as a classical pianist. Took lessons. Well, how it actually happened was I was in church one day with my mom, and the chorus director decided to play a piano solo one day. And I looked at my mom and I said, wow, I want to do that. And so she went up to the choir director at the time and asked her for piano lessons. So,
and were you singing in the choir?
Here and there. It wasn't something I liked to do. It didn't interest me at all. But I think that influenced some of my musical abilities.
So you weren't like a boy. I was a boy soprano. I was in a boys choir. You
Oh, yeah.
were actually a pianist, and then you got into voice later.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like around 17 years old.
Okay.
So
and then
I was pretty late.
You went to Curtis, right?
Oh, I went to Curtis much later in my life. I actually went to Manus in New York City first for 3.5 years. And then I went to Loyola University for 1.5 years. And then I took a semester off and lived abroad in Sweden. And then I went to Curtis for 5 years.
Okay, so, and you studied voice at Manus and at Loyola and in Sweden, I would presume. You didn't do piano.
No, I was just chasing love in Sweden.
Chasing love. Was this love interest in a death metal band by any chance?
Oh, we both love metal, actually. We both went to metal shows and rocked out all the time.
Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit about how often you sit down at the piano. Let's say you're doing like, I don't know, Dies Bildnis ist bezaubernd schön, you know, just a standard, beautiful magic flute aria, right? Are you going to sit down and accompany yourself and sing that?
Oh yeah, I
when you're
do. I
working
do
through
it
the
for
piece?
most of everything that I learn. I do. But I try to actually, when it's complete operas, I try to learn the whole opera, but I don't usually have the time to sit there like a real pianist and learn the entire excuse me, the entire opera.
No
But
worries.
yeah,
But you have this incredible ability because like most singers go to a coach, have an accompanist, and you just do it on your own.
I do. I do. I had a great teachers growing up as a pianist, who I recently actually just started getting back in touch with. She just recently flew over from Japan and now giving piano concerts in Miami right now. I was supposed to meet up with her, but unfortunately, I became under the weather. I have a bit of a cold right now, so I didn't want to get her sick before her concerts. But her name is Sakiko Ohashi, and she graduated from Juilliard. And she was the one who actually taught me when I was at NOCA, New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts in high school here.
All right. Okay.
And actually, this was my piano sort of career started to take off like around high school. I started doing a bunch of competitions and winning competitions and performing with orchestras around the country. And but before that, Hurricane Katrina happened.
Right.
When I was in ninth grade or so, or I think around 10th grade or something like that. And so I was thrown all across the U.S. I lived in Texas. I lived in South Carolina, boarding school in South Carolina, music boarding school in South Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina at the Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities,
You were at
something
the
like that.
governor's school in Greenville.
Yeah. I was
Yeah, of
only
course.
for
It's a
like
great school. Yeah.
yeah, I was just there for like a year, and then I went back to New Orleans for my senior year. And but during that whole time, I sort of like got tired of practicing, and the storm kind of threw me for a loop, and I just was tired of doing anything and everything. And so the Sakiko noticed it, and she was sort of getting fed up about it, and she was like, "If you don't practice, I'm gonna get rid of you. You're gonna get out of here." But funny story though, how I became a singer. Right
So how
before
did you become a
Hurricane,
singer?
right before Hurricane Katrina happened, there was a singer. I don't know if you know him or not, but we went to high school together, and he ended up going to Curtis as well. His name is Joshua Stewart,
Okay. Yeah.
and he lives in Germany now. And he sang "Total Eclipse" by Handel.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, and at the time, and every Friday we would have performance class, and he sang that Friday, and I was just staring up at him in like amazement, like wow, this piece, like it really did me in, because I'm a bit of a goth kid at heart, honestly. It never really leaves you.
No. I mean, Total Eclipse is like, that's definitely goth baroque,
Yeah.
Total Eclipse, no eyes, no sun, something like that. Yeah.
All
Oh,
dark.
dark. So what would you say that piano was your first love?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's where I find most of my creative inspiration. It's where I'm able to enter in different worlds and manipulate the worlds to make them how I see them.
And is there a difference between, as a pianist and as an opera singer? How does that impact you as a performer? What muscles are you pulling on? How does that sort of change your personality?
You mean doing them at the same time?
No, doing them separately. Then we'll talk about doing them at the same
Oh,
time.
doing them separately. It's like learning two completely different Olympic sports. You know, it and to to be a singer, you have to use your entire body, and to be a classical pianist, you have to use your entire body, but in a completely different way. You
Right.
know, and certain muscles have to be tense, and certain muscles have to be relaxed, and
Right.
and those things fight each other when you're trying to do them at the same time.
Yeah, so here's the funny thing. We actually have similarities because I was a singer, and then and I'm also a pianist. I do both very poorly, not nearly as good as you, which is why I'm sitting here and you have your job and I have my job. But what I realized when I was singing, obviously as a boy soprano, I didn't really think about technique. It just sort of came naturally. But when I learned more about singers, it's very difficult because the instrument is intangible. It's in there. You can't feel it. You can't sort of like change it in the same way that you can sort of change the actual inflection of your technique on your fingers as a pianist. You don't agree with that characterization?
No, I completely agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then, so if you're going to sing and play at the same time,
Yeah.
is something going on autopilot, or are you just like you're just kind of doing like 7 different lines of counterpoint in your head?
No, it's actually it's going to sound so boring, but it's repetition, honestly. And just to just do it over and over, tiny incremental changes, trying to make it's like I mentioned before, it's like the equivalent of trying to swim across an Olympic pool while at the same time throwing a shot put. You know, it's you have to. It's sort of a dance you have to do. I figured that I have to sit a little higher than usual on the piano, so that way I have more leverage to do more things with my body vocally. So it's like little things you figure out here and there that you have to do to compensate for the lack of things in other areas.
And then what about adjusting for projection as a singer? How do you avoid singing into the piano and projecting out into the hole if you're going to do this?
Well, I plan to have it completely memorized and get rid of the music stand, so that way there's no blocking of the piano, of my voice to the audience. And also we're going to have the piano situated in a way where my voice is directed completely to the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So let me tell the audience here. Jamez and I just kind of became friends when he was doing Omar. Just sort of talked and hung out, and and I discovered on Instagram all of these videos of Jamez singing and playing Dichterliebe at the same time. And so when I was like maybe a senior in college or something like that, I actually played through it as an accompanist. And to see someone just sort of play through it and sing it with such mastery, to me was just mind-blowing. And so I immediately messaged Jamez, and I'm like, let's make this happen. Let's make this a reality. Let's do this in 2023. And he was game. So Jamez, why Dichterliebe? Why A Poet's Love? Let's start with that piece.
Well, what actually influenced me to delve more deeply into it was, have you ever heard Clara Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor?
Sure.
If you go and you listen to the second movement, you will hear something very familiar. You will hear the first song of Im Wunderschönen Monat Mai.
Yeah.
And it is the same chordal structure. It's not as embellished as it is in the piano concerto, because it's a piano concerto, of course. But it's in the same key. So that intrigued me so much to the point that I was like, you know what? Let me just go look into the history of Robert and Clara Schumann, right? So I then go back all the way to 1830, and this is when Robert Schumann starts to take piano lessons from Friedrich Wieck, Clara Wieck's father.
That's right, yeah.
And all this time, they're around each other, Clara and Robert, and then around 1835 or so, you can read in their letters, which, by the way, there's books of volumes of their correspondence. Right. Like it's such an important resource to have the complete love story of two of the greatest classical music figures in the Romantic era.
Right.
And it's so easily found. I found it at my local university at Loyola and Tulane. They have both of them there. So around 1838 was in the letters where you start to see where they're talking about marriage. And so somewhere between 1835 and 1838, he asks her father for her hand in marriage. And he says, absolutely not. Absolutely not. She needs to focus on her piano future because her career was starting to take off. And if you look at it from the father's point of view, it makes total sense why he would do such a thing. You know, I mean, if you're looking at this guy who's sitting in front of you, and this is Robert Schumann, you're looking at him and you're like, you're a struggling musician.
Yeah.
You have no stable income.
Nope.
You have no prospects. You have a deteriorating mental health.
Correct.
That swings from deep depression to wild swings of manic episodes.
Yeah.
And so I understand why he would never allow such a thing to happen.
Yeah.
But me being the hopeless romantic that I am, that flew all the way to Sweden to find my true love, will always root for those types of people, you know? So after, mind you, the father went through even legal things to keep them apart.
Yeah.
So around 1840, they took the father to court and got married September 12th. And that exact same day, after the court overruling the father's objection to their being together, they got married on that exact same day in Schönefeld, which is like right near Leipzig. And had a small ceremony there.
Yeah,
but,
that's right. Because the father took like a kind of restraining order out on Robert Schumann, I think.
Yeah. They were forbidden to see each other.
They were legally forbidden to see each other.
But the thing about Dichterliebe is that it was completed over several weeks in June of 1840. So this was right before they took the father to court and got the permission to get married, to be together forever. And this made me completely believe that this song cycle is an ode. It's a dedication. It's a dedication to Clara and of their love together. You know, this what this whole song cycle is about, their love story. You know.
Yeah. Sort of fighting against. Really at odds with perhaps one of the most powerful figures, which is the father of your loved desire. Especially if it's a German man. So
yeah, not only that, the father had a lot of power in society. He was one of the greatest. He was one of the greatest piano teachers in the country. You know. Yeah.
And I mean, they were kind of like music royalty in Europe. The Wiegs.
Yeah.
So did you have, when I first listened to Dichterliebe, it was probably the Fritz Wunderlich recording.
Yeah, the famous one.
He is kind of a beautiful, strange story in and of itself, because I don't think he was meant to be a singer. He was studying French horn, and someone heard him kind of like screwing around in a practice room one day and was like, yeah, you should really think about being an opera singer or think about singing lead. Because, I mean, Fritz Wunderlich was more of a lead singer and a Mozart tenor than anything else. Do you have a favorite recording?
No, actually I don't. I mean, because I and then you can tell also by my interpretation of certain pieces that like it's a bit wild sometimes, my interpretations. I take a lot of great liberties, but I think it's okay because Schumann is like the Kanye West of the classical music world, you know?
Oh, that is not a good comparison.
I mean, it fits emotionally, it fits musically. Robert Schumann is the king of sampling, right?
Right. Okay.
Like Kanye West will sample any and anything from any and everywhere. It's the same goes for Robert Schumann. What was I getting at?
Do you want to do a demonstration?
I could. Oh yeah, I could. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was talking about wild variations
Yeah.
in my interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you some examples. Actually, let me just move my phone over here.
So this
All
is
right.
by the way, this is a new piano that Jamez bought specifically so he can work on and rehearse this piece. Pretty excited
So
about it.
so this is song number 9, for example. Uh, in the begin, this song is about him hearing in the distance flutes, trumpets, violins, and he then says to himself, "Oh, this must be the wedding. This must be the dance. This they must be dancing over there, the wedding of my dearest love. You know, the story of unrequited love." And so he's convinced himself of this. To me, this song is sort of the Lucia Mad scene of the
Yeah,
song,
sure.
right? And there are two ways pianists play, in general, two ways how pianists play this song. One of them is very much on the nose. They play it as if it's like a waltz, a dancing waltz, waltzy feel, sort of.
Right.
And so it goes like, and so it sort of has like this dancing type of feel, but it's very much on the nose. And then there are some pianists that play it as if it's like a snake that's sort of like slithering around. They play it like that. So the thing with me, because I'm playing and singing at the same time, I don't have to compromise with a pianist over interpretation.
Right.
So I'm able to go very deeply and explore very out there realms of interpretation. So the singing line that comes in after the brief piano introduction is which in itself sounds pretty matter of fact, right? But if you just change one note in it, it sounds almost nebulous in like a sort of mysterious sounding. So if you do, it sounds mysterious, right? All I did was just change one note. And I realized that I could play those notes in the running of the right hand. It is not mentioned, there's no accent on any notes in the running of the right hand. So I'm pretty pulling this out of my butt. So when I play it, I just accent those more, and it gives it a more mysterious feel, as if he's hearing this melody in the distance, and it goes in his ear, and it just comes out of his mouth. So it sorry. You know, so it creates the impetus for the singer to even sing his first melody, you know? It just spills out, you know?
I mean,
So
it's pretty mesmeric that you can kind of do that, because what you're doing is, I've never thought about this. You don't need another person to co-interpret the piece with you.
exactly.
You're like one symbiotic being that's doing both of these things at the same time.
And because
you're
I'm doing that,
teasing
there's
the
no
melody out of the accompaniment.
Yeah, but in a variation of the melody, because I didn't want to do the exact melody because that would just be boring.
Right.
So I made I just changed one note, and it makes it more mysterious.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. That's pretty, I'm pretty stoked. I mean, that's
And
pretty
so
cool.
yeah, and so that's basically like the thought process that I take every song through.
I think we're going to have to do a very good recording of this, actually, now that I'm thinking about this. because I don't want to miss this opportunity. Why don't you, do we have time for a few more questions with me and Jamez, or should we move to the audience? Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you are expecting visually, what kind of play you're expecting, how you're envisioning this to come together on stage?
Well, with I've been talking back and forth with the animator, of course.
I should say that Jamez is co-creating this with Miwa Matreyek, who's a filmmaker, animator, sort of shadow puppeteer out in CalArts in California.
Yeah. And so it went through a bunch of different variations of different versions of what I wanted to do and what she wanted to do. And I brought to her the story and my thought process, but over time, an artist being an artist, she sort of did her own thing, and I just let her run with it, and I have no restrictions on letting artists do their thing, you know. So she likes to put together, or she wants to put together for each and every song, different vignettes to tell specific, or to show specifically what she feels is going on in the piece musically.
So her interpretation. So oddly enough, even though you get to interpret the piano and the singing, you still have to collaborate with another person for the interpretation of the whole staging.
Yeah.
You can't get away with it. You can't you can't be totally Wagnerian here.
That's true. No, no Gesamtkunstwerk.
I mean, that was something that always fascinated me about Wagner, as a quick aside, is that like he wrote the music, he designed the sets, he designed the costumes, he wrote the libretto, and eventually he even designed the concert hall, the opera house that he wanted it all to take place in.
Yeah.
It's pretty singular.
Yeah. But the fact that she has her own world, and I sort of have my own world, and it's going to come together to create this beautiful cohesion, you know?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And
it's
I
wonderful.
like her work. I mean, I'm so excited about how it plays off of each other, because she has great whimsy in her design. She has a lot of play. She has a lot of light in it.
I love the way that
I'm excited to see how that works.
Oh yeah, she specializes in shadows and being a performer as well in her works, where she's manipulating her animations with her hands, her body, and her body becomes the animations, and the animations become her body, and it's beautiful to watch. She has a couple of TED Talks, actually, if you search her up on YouTube.
Her name, Miwa, that's M-I-W-A, Matreyek, that's M-A-T-R-E-Y-A-K.
Mm-hmm. And
okay, so you're doing this in Spoleto in 2023. What's next?
What's next for me? Well, other than Omar, which is being done everywhere now, we're doing it at Chicago, San Francisco, Boston is coming up next month. Other than that, also, I'm performing in Europe, where I'm doing Bacchus and Ariadne of Naxos at the Royal Danish Theatre. I'm also doing Jennifer. I'm doing Latza in Jennifer.
Ooh, I love Jennifer.
I do too. The music, oh my God.
Oh, stunning. God. I'm not the world's biggest fan of Ariadne, but God, Jennifer just takes my breath away.
I mean, it's so well. The way the music just matches the voices and the action, the drama, it's just unbelievable. And I get the lucky chance of performing it twice. I'm doing it at Hamburg, and also I'm doing it in Antwerpen.
Oh, right. Have you ever done any other work by him, or is this the first time?
I think this is the first time. I did do Jennifer once, but I didn't sing the big role of Latza. I sang the smaller role of Steva, and I was covering it at the Royal Opera House right before the pandemic. Actually, as the pandemic was happening, they had to cancel that production.
And is that your first time singing in Czech?
Yeah, that was my first time singing in Czech, but I have a natural affinity for Slavic languages.
That's a sentence I never thought many people would say, but okay.
No, like
What about, have you
Russian,
ever
Czech.
played any of his piano stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I gave when I was at Manus, I did a recital. So I did a student recital at Manus, and you usually do the basics, arias and songs, and
Right.
different composers and basic boring student performances, right?
Yeah.
A week before the performance, I come across Rachmaninoff's songs, right,
Yeah.
for the first time,
Yeah.
and I am blown away, blown away. So I go to my pianist for the concert that we're doing in a week or two, and I say, we're scrapping all of it.
Wow.
And we're doing a set of Rachmaninoff songs, and I'm going to use the music. I don't care. And then the second half of the performance, I'm going to perform Rachmaninoff's Piano Sonata number 2.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so
I'm going to be honest with you. It's still pretty goth, actually. It doesn't get more goth than rock in like 20th century classical music.
yeah, I know I have a bit of an obsessive personality. When I like something, I just if it's I cannot stop forging for more information on it,
Right.
or just trying to dive deeper into it. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. But as a musician, it just makes you a deeper interpreter, I think.
Okay, so I think we're going to transition to questions from the audience. First question is, who or what is currently inspiring you artistically?
Actually, John Vickers, he is inspiring me with his Wagner. I am obsessed with his Die Walküre.
Wow.
Because I have one coming up actually, where
You're doing Walküre?
I'm covering Zygmunt.
Oh, wow.
With Fabio Luisi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think there were talks of me actually singing the role, but my manager was like, absolutely not.
I mean, I've been trying to get you to do a Tristan, so like, I'm just trying to, I want to bide my time for that. So
Yeah.
let me know
No,
when you're ready.
I'm going in that direction, but I have a wonderful manager who looks out for my best interests and my longevity in my career.
Good.
And she makes sure that I'm always on the right track. But she would talk to them and said, how about you give him a smaller role? And then they were like, yeah, we'll give him a smaller role, but how about, can he cover the Zygmunt?
Right.
And she was like, okay, fine. So
You're
yeah.
learning it, yeah.
Yeah. So, but my art, who's inspired me artistically right now is John Vickers. His attention to detail, his musicality, the way that his unrestrained power and interpretation, and like he is not at the mercy of his voice. His voice is at the mercy of his musical intelligence,
Right.
Or his musical instincts.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
Second question, what do you do to prepare for a particularly demanding performance or rehearsal? I think I know the answer to this, but you go.
It's a long list of things that I do that I've cultivated over time. The list is too long to probably say here, but in short, let's just say it starts around 3 days before a performance where I don't even step foot in direct sunlight. Okay, here. So I was in Israel performing, and over there it's beautiful, it's hot, and there are beaches. And so I went to the beach, and I had a performance that evening.
Ooh, yeah.
And when I got there, and I know I wasn't talking to anyone, I wasn't like being loud. I was just out in the sun on the beach.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, my voice was just cracking for no reason.
Oh, right.
And I was like, whoa, no, this can't be happening. And so I tested it out 2 more times. And sure enough, because of the sun, those same 2 times that I experimented with it, it happens. So now it's in my book for things not to do.
That's
So
kind of a problem in Charleston. Not gonna lie,
that's why I was
Charleston's
walking
got its
around with an
beaches and
umbrella.
It's pretty sunny.
Yeah, I was walking around with an umbrella the entire time.
Okay, actually related to this, what do you like to do in your free time when you come to Charleston?
What do I like to do in my free time?
When you come to Charleston.
When I come to Charleston, eat food.
Yeah, it's good food.
It's good food.
It's good food.
Oh yeah. I mean,
We've gone to Baba's together.
oh yeah. Oh,
big
the
fan
food food there is just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess where there's money, there's food. Good food.
Yeah, Charleston's got good food. And I think it's not. I think it's that it's a port city, and you have so many different cultures, and people are coming together to like really try to bring their own imprint, their own culture onto. And the best way to do that is through food. I mean, it's a fantastic way to do it. I mean, my dad's from Alexandria, and the food there, it's not like the rest of the Middle East. It's not like the rest of North Africa. It's completely on its own. And I think port cities have that as a dynamic, especially hot, sticky port cities.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. New Orleans has that, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, Jamez. This has been awesome. You're a rock star. Can't wait to see you. I'm going to see you at the end of the month, and then we'll see each other again in the run-up to Spoleto in May. Thank you to the patrons. Thank you for your support of Spoleto Festival USA, and I've really enjoyed this talk today. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, buddy.